Hello, Dr. Dave Marsh, GP Templates. In this video, we're going to talk about how my career recently has changed from being military into civilian life, and how I've taken up a portfolio career, and how, as the title suggests, it really has saved my life. Portfolio career is one where you do more than one aspect to your general practice time. For me, I have four broad aspects that I mentally sort of compartmentalize to. A GP partner, but I'm in a probation phase, so I'm still into about 2 months of 6 of that, with the aim being that in about February of 22, if I like them and they like me, that I'll be taken on as a full partner. So I do 6 sessions there, so that works out at about 3 days a week. So that's the biggest part of my workload, really. I think also having that, and I use that to sort of support the others, but off that adds in a couple of areas, and they support the other aspects of my portfolio career. So the next big part is probably my Hull York Medical School work. So I'm the Associate Director in Primary Care in this area, and it was interesting how I got that job. So a good friend of mine put me in touch, saying, look, this job advert's come out, I know you're leaving the military, I'm a Hull York graduate, it's a really good medical school, why don't you look for it, it's right up your street. And so basically they wanted a GP who was known to the area to to basically coordinate medical students into the local general practices. So they wanted a GP who had ideally working or had worked, so I trained in the area, so I knew it really well. What's interesting is that personalities that I'm now working with, I'd trained alongside and had a lot of contact with through as a registrar, and it's sort of the same names going ahead, which just proves the first rule in life is don't be a dick, because it's a small world. And so because I had generally been nice, approachable, worked well with them, now it's come back to this end that I'm like, well, oh yeah, I've worked with you, a couple of years back. And so those relationships are far easier to work. So because I'm a general practitioner, that adds credibility to that job role. And also then you start, and what I didn't realize is that you start getting this reciprocal helping out of the different job roles. So how the Hull York job works, it makes me think about medical students and what they need, okay? And I'll bring that back to our practice, either, whether we can fit Hull York ones in my practice, might be a bit tricky, or just how can we support the medical students that we've already got in there. The next job role that I sort of look at is my general practitioner trainer status. So I am very early days in this. I'm not a full GP trainer, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. Always enjoyed teaching, and I'll always jump at those opportunities to do hand. So we have GP registrars in our practice, and I'll make sure, I will happily chip in with regards to teaching sessions that they want me to run, if they need to debrief at the end of sessions, or if they just need to support themselves. And it's a lot of those lessons and thoughts that I've given in to GP registrars that then initially fed into this YouTube channel, which sort of brings me on nicely to GP Templates. So GP Templates, initially I set it up as a registrar, and if you scroll back to some earlier videos, it was to do with System 1 templates that I had designed and that I was trying to sell basically, and it sort of morphed and evolved into something a bit different. Now I've taken a more broader aspect to the more educational approach. What I find, and what the purpose of this video is that they all support each other. And I didn't think they would, and I apologise if that sounds absolutely stupid, that I wouldn't think that they would support each other. But what's happened is now that the stuff that I've learnt, even just the basics of shooting, editing a video, what works well for content, now that I've taken over the social media stuff for the practice, I'm able to feed into that, which is great. So that instead of just putting wordy posts out, because I've done a little bit of research, giving more in terms of just a word update on Facebook, it's like, right, so I've shot a couple of videos because of the work that I've done on looking at YouTube Shorts, which is YouTube's answer to TikTok, because I'm comfortable trying to shoot those. They're not any good, they're not going to go viral anytime soon, but it's far better than what they've got at the moment, which was nothing. Okay, so all I'm doing is just taking that knowledge and putting my practice a step ahead. Okay, and likewise, I'm now looking at setting up my own practice YouTube account, which I've done. We've got a grand total of one video, but it just sort of, it's that first baby steps approach to it. Okay, and that's fascinating from that point. And then what's great is that practice was encouraging in terms of even an interview. Not that they restricted my hours, so they were more than happy to say, look, if you wanted to work 8-9 sessions, so sort of like, you know, 4.5 days a week, there'll be more that, you know, they would accommodate that, and then, you know, bite my hand off basically. But what's fascinating is that they deliberately turned around and said, look, we would much prefer if you're, you know, cut down to 6 sessions that we agreed upon, with the acknowledgement, because anything else that you do will influence the practice. And I didn't think much of it at the time, and it's only been now that I've thought, damn it, they're far brighter than I actually gave them credit for at the time. Because, you know, I can just see it, and it's just dawning on me now how these different areas of my professional career, instead of being separate silos that just don't influence each other, that they all spiral up. They say that your career is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, and so you've got to be careful of burnout and pacing yourself correctly. And that's one thing that I'm trying to be conscious of, because I appreciate that I've got a lot of things going on, and trying to motivate myself and keep going, and all those at times can be tricky. What's interesting, and when talking about burnout when it first came on the scene, and resilience and whatnot, and they talked about career progression. Okay, now in the military, that's very easy. You get rank. Okay, you do this, you get an extra rank. You do X, Y, and Z, you get good reports and whatnot. And it's a very well structured system for that. And so actually you can see your career pushing out, what do I need to do to get to that next step? And that drive and that motivation for that next step will often keep certain people in the military going. Okay. Interestingly, on the reverse, if they're not driven by that, that's often why they leave. So when you hit, and what I can see where people are getting at from general practice, is that they fear that if you became, for example, like I did, you know, that on the face of it, I could go in and say, like, right, I'm a partner. In terms of my career progression, there's not much more that I can go in that area alone. And I look at this in a different way. What seems to be working is like, well, hang on a second, that's fine. So instead of looking at a peak in one, can I spread this out? Okay, so what other bits and pieces can I do, maintaining that I don't take on too much, that will help me keep me inspired from that way? In terms of what to do portfolio-wise, obviously, my personal opinion is that you've got to do something that interests you, obviously. I'm really interested in teaching and education from that point of view. So for me, it's relatively easy because there's loads of opportunities out there. I think in terms of finding those opportunities, I've just been quite, you know, you've got to be quite forward about it. So yes, the Hull York job was a good friend of mine because, you know, he sort of pointed me in that direction, and it was a case of like, I'm not sure if I'm what they're looking forward to. I'll put a CV in and see what happens. The other jobs that I do in terms of the registrar wise and teaching, I emailed our local VTS because I'd moved out just outside of the area from where I had trained, and so I didn't have those relationships. But it was a case of just sending a couple of emails, being a bit forward and saying, look, hi, this is me, this is what I want to do, can I help you? And what's interesting is that they actually bit my hand off because a lot of the teaching that was delivered over Zoom, the teachers at the time weren't comfortable doing that, and so they'd pulled from it. And I thought, well, just give it a go, basically. And it's been interesting. Okay, it's not always been easy, but it's certainly been interesting. So that's that point of view. And the main way that I found that I was interested in teaching was actually not through me myself, but actually the appraisal process. So back when I was a junior military doctor, we had to go through an appraisal process. And so my senior at the time looked at the stuff that I was doing and said, what are you doing? And I said, like, oh, I'm really interested in this, this, this. And then she went, no, you're not. You're interested in teaching. And I went, oh. I went away and thought about it. She was bob on, absolutely bob on. And I know people slag off the appraisal process. I know it's a lot of work, but in fairness, when I've had, I've had now about 6 appraisals, and honestly, I've always gained something from them. So I find that they are a useful process. Yes, I appreciate it takes a lot of my man hours to actually put into a portfolio and to record and log, etc., etc. But actually, when I've had difficult years, having someone to reflect back on that has been really, really useful. So from that reason alone, I think actually it's a good thing. Okay, do I think it makes me a better doctor? No. But it just keeps my career on track from that way. And actually having someone who's completely separate from my educational career or my professional career to reflect on what I've done, it's actually been quite helpful and quite handy. So that's my sort of ramblings on a portfolio career. I would certainly, one of those, you need to do something that interests you, okay, and or maybe even just experiment. How I thought my portfolio career would start and what it is even just 2-3 months into it is completely different. And I expect that as I sort of go on in the next years or so, it develops. But each bit complements each other, which is one thing that I didn't realise about or didn't appreciate. And they are helping each other, exponentially. Okay, so it's worthwhile looking at that really for that point of view. Also, just don't be scared of just trying something a bit different, okay, because I think for longevity in general practice, I'm finding it very tough, okay. I'm reimbursed very well for that, but actually the being able to sort of dart around in between different things just means that I get a break from being in practice to do something a bit different, and then actually doing something that bit different I can then bring back into general practice. I'm renewed, refreshed and good to go. So have a look around, okay. Obviously, that is just my thoughts and opinions on the portfolio career. It's worked wonders for me. I hope it's something that you can at least look at. I've been Dr. Dave Hymarsh, GP Templates, and you have a lovely day.